My name is Georgie Ann Bailey. I'm the Executive Director for the American Institute of Architects, New York State. Today's live stream program, The Value of Advocacy and the Citizen Architect, is being presented with the goal of inspiring you, our members, to become engaged in civic discourse advocacy and also to be more value to your community and to continue your contributions to your community. For those of you who are not aware of it, this program has been approved by the American Institute of Architects for 1 LU credit. You'll receive a card emailed to you to fill out at the conclusion of the program. And if you will return it to us, then we will have your credit posted. The program will be divided into 2 parts. Part 1 will explore the value of public participation and service through an interview with our special guest, Assemblymember John McDonald, who is sitting to my left. Assemblymember McDonald represents the 108th Assembly District, encompassing parts of Albany, Rensselaer, and Saratoga counties. Assemblymember McDonald brings a breadth of both private and public experience to the New York State Legislature. Assemblymember McDonald is a practicing pharmacist and president of Maris Pharmacy in Cohoes, New York, where he also served as mayor. As mayor, John succeeded in revitalizing downtown Cohoes, an issue that is very, very important to architects, focusing on the adaptive reuse of historic buildings in the city to secure more than 2,000 new residential units. As a licensed professional, small business owner, and public servant, Assemblymember McDonald is a shining example of how private citizens can become involved in public service. Assemblymember McDonald is joined by our Vice President of Government Advocacy, Joe Aliotta, AIA. Mr. Aliotta is a principal and board director for Perkins Eastman in Manhattan, a past president of our AIA New York chapter, and dedicated mentor to young aspiring architects. Part 2, which is more technical, will be presented by the Government Affairs team here at AIA New York State, and will provide you an overview of the top policy issues facing our profession of architecture and how you can help on behalf of the profession.
Thank you, Georgie, and thank you to all who could be with us today. As Georgie stated, my name is Joe Aliotta, and I'm joined today by a very special guest, Assemblymember John McDonald. Thank you for being with us today, Assemblymember.
Joe, it's good to be here.
Let's start with an observation about the composition of the state legislature. It seems that the dominant career path to becoming a state legislator is being a lawyer or a career politician. While legal background is obviously a beneficial trait for aspiring lawmakers, crafting law is just part of the job. Assemblymember, why do you think there is an imbalance of occupational representation in the legislature?
You know, it's an interesting question, and there are a fair amount of those who are lawyers or graduated from law school. But it's interesting, former Congressman Mike McNulty and I talk quite often about the fact that the percentage of members that are lawyers today are much less than what they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's interesting, what concerns me is there's truly a lack of, there's not that many practicing professionals. As I often say, I'm the only practicing healthcare professional in the Assembly and the Senate. And quite honestly, I think there should be more. What we're seeing more of is more individuals, well-intentioned, elected by their constituencies, that are advocates. And that's what makes it a little bit of an interesting dynamic, at least in the New York State Assembly.
Do you feel that the legislature and the people of this state would be better served with a more diverse representation of professional backgrounds?
Absolutely. You know, quite honestly, very often I'm approached by my colleagues, obviously about the pharmacy issues, which plays a large role in people's health, obviously, but about healthcare issues in general. So, you know, I think having real-time experience what's going on in the profession, or the ability to retrieve research and share that information in a quick, timely manner makes for a more stronger and broadly diversified body, which I think is important in many aspects.
What inspired you to get involved in your community and decide to run for public office?
I would say my path is probably not the most traditional. I've been a pharmacist for 33 years. During the 1990s, our city was struggling a little bit. And as a pharmacist, I have the ability to engage with people. You're going to find out very quickly if you like people or not. And obviously, being third generation owner of our business, I had a good reputation because we work hard and we gain people's trust. And people said, geez, why don't you consider running for mayor? Now, I didn't know a darn thing about running for mayor. No political science background, anything like that. But the one thing I did know how to do pretty well is to make sure that I reasoned things responsibly, but I had good people around me. And it led to a successful 13-year career as mayor. And once you're involved, you can't help but get more involved. I used to go down on Pharmacy Day, and other days I used to go with other mayors and visit with the legislators to tell them our concerns, and it's a great opportunity to engage with your state representative. I enjoyed that because they really took it seriously and they really actually reacted to it. Sometimes it's not that obvious, but they did. And timing worked out. I've been elected for four-year terms, which was going to be my last term, and my neighbor and friend Ron Canstreri decided to retire. Position opened up, and every municipal leader in my district said, you're the person. So I got lucky in that aspect.
As a practicing pharmacist and business owner, how do you balance the demands of running a business and serving your constituency?
You got to have good people.
Yeah.
You have to have good people. And you also have to embrace technology. And I'm fortunate, once again, being the owner, I kind of can set my own schedule, but that schedule also means a typical day is at 4:30, get up in the morning, and at 10 o'clock, 10:30, you get home. And in between, if you really manage your time well, you get an awful lot done. But having great staff at the pharmacy definitely allows me to be away more than I need to at times. But at the same token, being an elected official, your schedule is what you desire to make it, and I balance it pretty well.
Great. How does your professional and business background help you as an elected official and community leader?
At the end of the day, every 2 weeks I have to pay payroll. I had to keep my staff going. And the same applies whether it's my pharmacy when I was mayor of the city of Cohoes. And my role primarily is to deal with problems. And the way we solve problems is not singular by yourself, but it's done collaboratively with who is appropriate to be involved in the decision making. So I am a very good listener, collaborator, trying to really look at people's strengths and say, okay, well, we know this is insane to keep doing this. How do we figure out a solution? How do we change things? And I think that that's the skill that I've learned along the way that is something that I continue to try to perfect on a daily basis.
Great. Thank you.
Just listening to you, I'm sure our members are saying, we're facing the same challenges, and you've given them great advice. The American Institute of Architects, we have a citizen architect program. And it seeks to encourage and recognize our members to become involved in local, state, and federal government. Quite a few of our members serve on local planning boards, historic preservation boards, and in many cases, they're city council. Tell me, Assemblymember McDonald, what advice would you give to them who may be considering a run for elected office?
I think the first part is start local. Get involved with your community. You mentioned some of the positions, at the planning board, zoning board, but also understand that they've got a good profession at their back. Let's face it, architects are well educated. They're thoughtful. They're creative. And more importantly, at least in my experiences dealing with architects, they're problem solvers. And quite honestly, citizens want their problems solved. They don't want to hear why it doesn't work. They want to figure out why it works. And like I said, my firsthand experience in dealing with our own construction project in our business but also as a mayor who worked with dozens and dozens of architects on recreation of our historic resources in our city of Cohoes, architects know how to solve problems.
And I think just listening to you, not only your problem-solving ability, but how you're balancing this with your family. I'm sure that everybody listening in has learned a lot. Tell me though, while you were the mayor of Cohoes, you were instrumental in leading the charge to rehabilitate historic properties and return them to a useful purpose. Historic preservation is a major area of importance for architects, no matter where they practice, and because of the impact on their communities. Tell me then, describe a little bit about how you did this.
You know, it was very interesting. I can't say, and I think most architects would agree, there's not one project that's the same as the next. They're all unique. They all involve creativity. They allow, from a municipal level, the municipal government really understanding the nature of the project, the challenges that are involved, to try to make sure that we can all reach the same common goal, which is a successful project. I look at the Harmony Mills project, which is, will be probably in Cohoes' history what was the largest job attractor in the early 1900s. And now in the early 2000s, it turned out to be the largest attractor for a whole different purpose, not for industrial purposes, but for market rate residential. That really is a beacon for the capital region. And that was not an easy project by any stretch of the imagination. Very creative architect, a solid construction firm, and I will say an administration, but more importantly code officers who work closely with the state building code to really understand where variances needed to be. And the best part is that everybody came together and worked very diligently to make this happen. And it's critical. When you look at the property tax burden in New York State, particularly upstate New York, where manufacturing has kind of moved off to either foreign countries or other parts of our country, we still have a lot of great, rich, resourceful buildings, whether it's a 2-unit building on Main Street or whether it's a colossal industrial building like the Harmony Mills. With the New York State and the federal historic tax credits that are still intact, there is great incentive for developers to invest in these properties. And at the same token, it's going to need great partners, including architects and engineers, that are going to be willing to want to work around and take what was built in the early 1900s and make it suitable for 2017 and 18.
And there's a lot of that going on around the state
and
right now, thankfully.
Thankfully so, because the reality is it's making a difference not only in attracting millennials and also baby boomers to live in the urban areas, but it's also going to be playing a very large critical role in regards to helping to alleviate tax burden.
Yes, and enriching our communities at the same time.
Yep.
In your role as a state legislator, you meet with a variety of groups with diverse interests who come to Albany each year with a policy agenda. What process do you go through to determine whether or not you are going to support a particular policy proposal?
You know, I really spend a lot of time, and it's been the biggest challenge, moving from being the mayor and the president of your company where you control your agenda. And all of a sudden you're in this body that has 10,000 bills over a 2-year cycle. You can quite honestly wear yourself out trying to be everything for everybody. But what I really have focused on, particularly in my early years, but continue to do so today, is really, I take every meeting myself with every constituency group. Nobody gets staff, they get me. And I make it a point. It's got to be very rare that you're not going to see me unless I've seen you 25 times and you're just doing a drive-by. Because I want to hear from them how their legislation is either impacting their profession or impacting their community or impacting their lives. And with that, I do my own analysis. I don't just say, okay, what's the party position? I look at, okay, what's the right thing to do? Yes, for the people I represent, but for the body as a whole. Being the only practicing healthcare professional, I do keep in mind what's important to the 108th Assembly District members. But I also know that, when it comes to cholesterol management, when it comes to opioid and heroin abuse, it's not just relegated to my district, so I can look at a much larger landscape in that aspect. But the one thing I learned very quickly is that no matter how heinous the topic they want to come in to talk to you about is, something that you think you'd never have any interest in, those are the meetings that I've actually been more enriched by, because I really understand from a greater perspective why this issue continues to beat a drum, and understand, okay, how can we try to address their concerns, but also be mindful of the other side of the argument that has legitimate concerns as well. It's a very interesting process.
Thank you. I'm sure we found that to be helpful.
Yeah.
That's going to wrap up part one of the program. I'd like to thank our guest, Assembly Member John McDonald, for taking the time out of his schedule to sit down with us and provide some very helpful insight into the power and value of public service and giving back to our communities. Assembly Member, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really
Good to see you,
appreciate it.
Joe. Thank you.